Hello and welcome back to the XVI podcast. I am Mark, and this week we are talking about the art behind the games. So I have brought along XVI's artists. We have lead artist and creative director Kurt,
Hello.
generalist consultant and head of his own project Dylan,
I.
and the guy that does all the nice pixel art for us, Alex.
Hello.
So, guys, how important is the right art style when creating a video game world?
I think it's mainly to do with immersion and depth. That's an important factor when it comes to designing a game world. And you need the right art style for it. Having the right art style would help with player immersion within the world. So, for example, if you're going for a horror game, you want to create an atmospheric world, and you want to use an art style that would complement that. Um, there are ways to either build a game around the art style or build the art style around a game, and it varies from company to company. But I think having the right art style is a very important factor in a game. Unless your game is, based around being goofy, or you know, you're not taking it too seriously, or you're playful about it.
Yeah, I agree with what Kurt's saying. I also believe that it depends on the age group that the game's intended for. So, for instance, for Animal Crossing, like that's more. I wouldn't say it's solely targeted, but it's mainly focused on the children, and that. So it's got a happy sort of playful style, like art style to it, whereas sort of maybe older targeted games for the older generation are sort of, I say older, sort of 18 sort of plus, it would be more gritty and realistic.
Yeah, I'd say it's actually very important because, like, as Kurt says, it's one of those things that creates the atmosphere and how you view the tone of the game and stuff like that. And like one of my gripes that I don't feel like this works in the game at all, but in the Kingdom Hearts series, because it's like a shared property by Disney and Square Enix. When you add Disney into the mix, it it has that cartoony style. But that never really bothered me when mixing around with the Final Fantasy aspect. It's when you added Pirates of the Caribbean into it where I felt this shouldn't be here because it's mixing the cartoony style of the game along with real life elements.
So kind of like Fortnite, where they've tried to sort of like I said the piratey skins in Fortnite, where they sort of look comedy-ish, or comedic.
No, it's like because it's meant to be comedic in Fortnite, isn't it? It looks kind of like goofy and cartoony.
Yeah,
But how does that apply to Pirates of the Caribbean?
yeah.
In the movies, they're meant to be like killing each other and stuff.
It's not a very good contrast either, because I imagine I've not actually seen the Pirates of the Caribbean bits in Kingdom Hearts, but from what I can see, the character design for the main characters in the game are not sort of anatomically correct. I think it's the right way of saying it. It's like they're all out of proportion because they've got to match with the Disney characters. So then you have
Yeah,
Pirates of the Caribbean where they are real people, or they're meant to look like real people, and it must be a bit jarring.
yeah, exactly. And the main character Sora is supposed to be a real person, but looks disproportionate compared to the real people of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. So that's a good example of where it can go wrong. The example I was thinking of was the April Fool's game mode that Ubisoft added to Rainbow Six Siege, because it was supposed to be like light-hearted and jokey and fun, but at the end of the day, it's a game about SWAT teams invading premises to either rescue hostages or disarm bombs. It didn't fit. It just felt weird. And you had the weird voiceover as well, talking about Mr. Bear, and the hostage was dressed up as a 6-foot bear, and it just I'd never enjoyed playing that game mode because it just felt so out of place in the universe that Siege is supposed to be set in.
Yeah, it was very silly, like for its game type or
Yeah,
Yeah,
but don't get me wrong. Like as much as like they have examples of where these things don't work, they are like the rare occasions where they do work. Like for instance, in A Hat in Time, which is a very cartoony game, there is a segment of it which deals with survival horror, and I feel like it does that quite well.
yeah. I think that there is. It's kind of the exception that proves the rule kind of thing. There are games. Some do it ironically, and get it right, and some do it as their USP. To try and separate themselves from other games in that genre. So it can work, but there are more cases than not where people have tried it and it hasn't worked. As Kurt said, it's all about setting the right sort of atmosphere in your game, and it's very easy to ruin the immersion just from things looking out of place.
Hmm.
So I kind of dropped you in at the deep end a little bit there. I was feeling a little bit mischievous this week. So we'll kind of talk about what you guys like in games. So what kind of art styles do you tend to go for with games? If that is even a factor when you're choosing what games to play.
So, ever since I got a 4K monitor, it's been a habit of mine to go back to all games like that I've had in my libraries and up the resolution to 4K to get that um, to experience the trueness of it, as well as like say installing mods that enhance photorealism. And I guess like it's become a favorite thing of mine now, seeing the high resolution of games and seeing what they've become. But before that, yeah, I liked any other art style. I didn't mind low quality ones, but it's just weird to go back to it after experiencing the higher quality.
yeah. See, I'm similar, but I steer clear of like that realistic, gritty sort of photorealism because you play a game to escape from sort of the outdoor or sort of the day-to-day life. I prefer it when it's got that unrealistic cartoon approach to it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
thinking. I'm hearing you say that, but at the same time, I'm thinking you're always the one that wants to play Siege, where there's blood spatters on the wall and you see people get blown up and stuff like that.
I think it depends on what why that I'm playing the game. So if it's a serious tactical game, that's where like my exception is. But if it's just, and here's my trademark slogan, if you're just like memeing around, just playing around on a game, I like that unrealistic cartoon like vibe.
Yeah, I get that. Like, you do want to sort of immerse yourself in a different world, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to have it look different.
Yeah, like break from reality is.
yeah. For me, I like a bit of everything. I'm not, but I'm a little biased towards the cartoony feel, like cell shading or 2D and 3D kind of stuff, because it gives me that nostalgic feel of games from my childhood. One of the best games on the GameCube was a cell shaded game, and that was The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker.
Yeah, the nostalgia is a part of it. I think that's why more and more companies now are sort of going back to simplistic art styles because it does sort of invoke that feeling of nostalgia in their audience. I mean, for me, I think I've said this before in a previous podcast. I'm not that into like 4K style games. Like, I don't actively seek them out. If I happen to like a game that is also 4K or high quality, then that's a nice bonus. But Minecraft, OpenTTD, the original Pokemon games, they're very simple in their art style. But I mean, OpenTTD is a very good example of a game that simplistic in its art style, but very, very complicated in what's going on behind the scenes. So it's almost a payoff. So you sacrifice the graphics, and in return you get a higher performance. So I'm very much interested in games like that. But I mean, talking to you guys, checking out some of the games that you guys have recommended, I'm definitely starting to see the appeal in higher quality games and different art styles and different genres. So I'm pretty much an open book at the moment.
I wanted to ask a question to the group because I haven't played these games, but like Just Cause and Far Cry, because aren't they known for sort of setting the benchmarks in game quality?
Yeah, Just Cause is an interesting one because it is photorealism, um, but it's done very like the whole game is quite slapstick in the things you can do.
Okay.
Like you can use grapple hooks to make a statue face palm himself, for example.
Yeah,
Um,
I would think a good example of one of those 4K games would be The Witcher 3.
yeah, again with The Witcher, like the realism is there graphically, but the game itself has magic, different types of creatures that we don't have in our world. So it's kind of like the graphics are realistic, but then the game itself perhaps isn't.
So would you say as like a consumer that would make you purchase a game like the more realistic it is?
I think it depends on what you're looking for. Like I like the Just Cause games because of the chaos that you can cause. I don't particularly care whether it looks realistic or not. It's just a fun game to play.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
So yeah, I guess it really does depend on what kind of thing you're looking for.
Okay.
We've talked about what we prefer. Uh, Dylan and Kurt, this is mainly aimed at, but Alex, as pixel artist, you can answer this as well. Um, which video game worlds have inspired you most in your own art creations?
So I might as well jump in here.
Go ahead.
The Pokemon series, the original Pokemon series for me it's on the Game Boy or the Nintendo DS. That style of game, and I suppose it is a RPG sort of game, pixel art. It just has it's just like a feel to it where it's a Pokemon game. Like, I mean, obviously there's hints, obviously there's Pokemon in it, you're a Pokemon trainer and there's creatures, but the style of it just I don't know, it has a childhood sort of feel to it, and there's sort of a nostalgia feel because that's Pokemon, and that's what influenced me.
Yeah, I get what you mean. One thing I like about Pokemon is the original games were very like top-down kind of art, camera view. But
Yeah,
even now they've kind of gone into a more 3D view. There's still that identity, so you can just look at it straight away and say, "Oh, that's a Pokemon game."
and like I suppose an Animal Crossing would be maybe the next level up from the Pokemon graphics. I'd guess it's still got that aspect of it, but it's a lot more crisp, and that's sort of that's inspired me as well.
So it's a lot of sort of top-down style games.
Yeah, and then you've got like a sort of not a bird's eye view, but almost a bird's eye view of the world.
My art style focuses around like Japanese anime and manga, and I don't know it's just become a habit to stick with that type of style, and I enjoy drawing in that style too. Um, but yeah, like visual novel games, their worlds, their characters, they all inspire my art style. Like I go and learn what techniques they use to draw certain characters, how they draw certain clothing's materials, how to define the materials as well. All those aspects have helped shape my art style to make it more suitable and appropriate for a visual novel.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds more like inspiration from almost outside of video games.
Mm.
That's interesting. It's like transferable media.
My art style, well, as of recent anyway, has been geared towards or inspired by things like Dark Souls, Spyro, Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, that kind of stuff. Old, my older work is like was more based on the realistic stuff, superheroes and things. But nowadays, I try to give it a more what do you call it, medieval approach to it. other than that, I'm just like if I'm looking at a particular source of inspiration, I would try to like mix in the style with whatever I draw.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I must admit, like I don't like medieval style games, but I do kind of like medieval style history. So to take inspiration from that, I think that's pretty cool. I kind of I feel like I'm butting in on your guys' territory here, but I feel like I can answer this one a little bit as well because behind the scenes we have our main projects that we're working on, which again, unfortunately, we still can't give too much away on right now. But behind the scenes, we are working on some other things. So I do have a project myself that I'm currently working on, and I've taken for mine a lot of inspiration from British history. So particularly around sort of the 5th, 6th century, transitioning from sort of Roman style into what we would now call medieval style. Um, so I've been reading up on a lot of British history and getting inspiration from that. But I do see some parallels when I read things that have happened in the real world. I sort of read it and I think, oh, that actually sounds a little bit like what happened in such and such. So I guess for me working as a game designer, but also working on my own YouTube channel, real life examples are what inspire me the most. So I'm always looking at how other people do it, I guess, and then saying, okay, now what can I add to that to make it mine, like my own style. So I don't know if you guys sometimes do that as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Uh, yeah. I suppose there's a bit of crossover.
So yeah, this is kind of straying away from art a little bit now, but what real world designs or what video game world designs are your favourite? And as I said, it could be for any reason. It doesn't have to be for aesthetic reasons. It can also be for design reasons.
For me, I'd say once again Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh, here we
Uh,
go. Here we go.
um, no, I just like the fact that, like, not only are you, the typical hero of the people, blah blah, but you get to dip your hands into, like, the politics of the world. You get to dip into, like, the spy network of the world and the military and other aspects of your own faction, and by doing so, it just expands the lore of the world around you. You discover more. You discover the consequences of your own actions that has impacted the world. Yeah, it's just really interesting how Dragon Age Inquisition has done it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I know about Dragon Age. I've never played the games, but I do know from hearing people talk about it. The world design is what makes it stand out. It's an incredibly immersive world.
So I'm probably talking about this from an earlier podcast, but I'd say the world of Azeroth in World of Warcraft. It's definitely got a, I don't know, I would say unique art style to it, where like it has its own characterization. I don't know if that's the right word, but it has its own sort of atmosphere to it, I guess you'd say, which is good.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing to bring up games from previous podcasts because at the end of the day, we've been inspired by them. So it's got to be for more reasons than one.
For me, if I was to think of a world, like the world building, I think more of the Elder Scrolls games
Okay,
because that kind of stuff. But no, we're talking about art here.
it can be for
Favorite like
it can be for world building reasons too.
no, we'll move past that now. Talking about one of the best games made, Paper Mario, because that world is made entirely of paper. And the first game, it was just like an aesthetic, like, oh, an RPG, everything's made out of paper, cool. Just use these elements. But in the second game, they start utilizing it, where I could utilize the paper mechanics because I was made out of paper. And I don't know, there's just something so fun about that.
Could you could is that similar to Cuphead, sort of where it's gone back to that sort of 2D graphics, where it's like got that retro art style?
Well, that was the thing about the series. It was kind of like 2D graphics, but on a 3D plane,
Yeah.
and it just utilizes that concept so well.
Yeah, that's a good one because it kind of stretches beyond the norm. I'm just trying to think for my example. I guess I'm going to exploit a bit of a loophole and say from Fallout 3 onwards, uh, they're kind of my favourite world designs because, as I've just said, they're based on real world examples. Um, I think that the only one really where you can say perhaps it's not is Fallout New Vegas, because some of the geography is a little bit different in the Fallout New Vegas world compared to real life Nevada. But Fallout 4, when like when it was first theorized that it's going to be set in Boston because they saw people from Bethesda in Boston sort of eyeing up the landscape, I was kind of skeptical and thinking surely they're not going to recreate Boston. Like you can't do that in a game world. There's no way they'd be able to do that. But as you're walking around the Commonwealth, you see a building and you think, oh, I wonder what this is in real life. And you look it up and they've basically made it exactly how it is in real life, except it's been hit by a bomb blast. I think that's really impressive that they were able to do that. Because I say, you think it's a video game, it's going to be fictionalized, but even Fallout 76, there are a lot of locations in that world that are almost exactly the same as they are in real life, besides the bomb blast.
I'll say they've done that for one of your favourite games, Mark, isn't it? GTA. In
Yeah.
GTA 5, where is it Los Santos? That
Yes.
is that it's meant to be like I suppose a replica of LA, but not truly 100%. It's got some differences, but it definitely gets inspiration from the city.
Yeah, the one that spoils it for me with GTA, I'm trying to remember which game it is. I think it might be Vice City. Someone mentions New York, and considering Liberty City is supposed to be New York, um, like I always imagined the GTA world as being like a parallel universe to ours. So instead of New York, you have Liberty City. Instead of Miami, you have Vice City, and instead of Los Angeles, you have Los Santos. So to suddenly hear them say a real world city, it kind of ruined it for me because I started thinking, but then where's Liberty City if New York exists? Uh, so if you take that one line out of it, it's a really well made recreation of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that kind of sticks with me quite a lot, and perhaps it does more than it should. But it's yeah, I'm kind of torn now as to is it supposed to be a different universe or is it supposed to be our universe? The other thing I was going to say about Fallout very quickly was one of the reasons I like Fallout 4 in particular. The whole real world Boston thing is impressive, but the AI in Fallout 4, I felt like it wasn't necessary the way they actually did it, but I think the way they did do it was incredibly clever. So like Diamond City actually feels like a real city because everyone has a schedule. Same with Good Neighbor. Sanctuary kind of has it, depending on who you have living there. Some people do come and go, like the traders. You see them entering and leaving, and just encountering random people across the map. Like you can never pinpoint exactly where someone is at any time, just like in the real world. I think that was really nicely done, the way that Bethesda pulled that off. So yeah, next point. And again, like when I wrote these questions late at night, so they don't make complete sense, so I'll reword it slightly. How character and level design can influence a game. So the example I was thinking of when I created this was uh, Toys for Bob when they did the remastering of Spyro, so the Reignited trilogy. I believe it was them or like a branch of them that worked on the Skylanders game. Um, and I don't know if you guys remember what Spyro looked like in the first Skylanders game that he appeared in.
Oh, I do.
Oh
Yep.
yes.
We
Yeah,
will not speak of
that
that.
that came about because they wanted to use the original Spyro character model, and they were told that they didn't own the rights to it, so they couldn't use it.
Ah.
So they had to create a new version of Spyro, and I think they did that version out of protest, which is why he looks so bad. because coincidentally enough, as soon as they got the rights to the character, they did a very, very good job of remastering him for the
Yeah.
Reignited trilogy.
So
Yep.
do you reckon it was out of spite?
Yeah, I think it was because I mean, I watched loads of interviews with the Toys for Bob team about the Reignited trilogy, and they're all Spyro fans. Like, they've played all the games, they love the character so much, and I can just see them in the room being told that they couldn't use the Spyro that they wanted to use.
Mm.
And yeah, I think it was spite. They just said, okay, well, if we can't do this, then we're going to do it really badly. Of course, that's not proof. You know, it's sort of me speculating, but I can see that happening. So yeah, that was the example I had. The other example was Borderlands. I don't know if you guys know the story with Borderlands. The original game was, I wouldn't say photorealistic, but it was more realistic looking than what we know Borderlands as now. But there were serious performance issues, so it was kind of a last minute decision to use cell shading instead. So kind of like I said earlier, they sacrificed quality in order to increase performance, and actually it worked very, very well, because that's now what we know Borderlands as being.
Yeah, it's become very iconically stylistic.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'd definitely say as well, this is sort of going off on a tangent, but you know when you used to play on the PlayStation 1 or the GameCube, and the graphics that you were used to with a game, and
yeah,
you, as a kid, you didn't know any better. There wasn't really any better in sort of graphic advancement, and so you enjoyed the game for what it is. Whereas you look back at it now and you're like, how did I ever play that? But it's only now because we've got better that it hinders its experience of a game, because you know there is better. But
yeah.
when you're at the peak, when you've got the latest game and that's the peak of current technology, there is no graphic hindrance to the gameplay. It's only when you revisit it and there's lower graphics, you're like, oh,
Yeah, that's one of the things that's like hindering me from going around and searching for the old Legend of Zelda games for the GameCube, because I know for a fact they have HD versions of those on like the Wii U, and I'm personally just kind of waiting for a port to the Switch.
I think a lot of people are kind of doing that now. Like, I mean, we are planning a podcast in the future to talk about what games should and shouldn't be remastered. Um, but I think there's a big market now for old classic games getting remastered so that a new audience can enjoy them. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, there isn't much incentive for me to go back and play those games from when I was a kid, because there's either a sequel or there's a spiritual successor that, to be honest, does it better now.
yeah. See, I'd be happy if they revisited the EA Harry Potter games. So
Yeah,
the first few where the graphics were just sort of, it felt like they were painted on rather than featured, if that makes any sense. They weren't really sculpted. They were sort of just a mask with a face printed on it. So I definitely think they could revisit the early ones of those.
And I would personally want for them to remaster Lego Rock Raiders,
Oh yeah,
because you can't really play that on any modern operating system.
I tell you the one that makes me laugh, and I'll be careful how I word this because I don't want to offend anyone. But the original Metal Gear Solid, the PlayStation 1 version that came out, was it 1998? I think it first came out. Um, the voice acting in that game is brilliant. Like, you really feel like they are playing the role perfectly. But it does ruin it slightly for me at the end of the game, where Liquid Snake is like taunting Solid Snake, and it zooms in really close on his face, and it's literally like two dots for eyes and then a slight sticking out bit for the nose and then just a line for the mouth. And it like, I kind of want to see with what the remastered version looks like, where you actually see their face move.
yeah.
For that particular game, I can imagine that one having a remastered at some point. I mean, it
Yeah,
happened for the Resident Evil series.
yeah. I mean, Resident Evil was a good example of Like there's no sign of a new Resident Evil game anytime soon, but because the remastered versions are coming out, people are happy, and I think it's, as I say, it's a good example of it done well. They know where their market is, and they're making the most of it. Um, Another example I had for developers sort of having to downscale slightly, Vice City. Vice City very obviously isn't the same size as Miami. I know that the original map for Vice City was a lot larger than the published version, and they had to scale it down because of the limitations of the PS2, and also the loading screens when you travel between islands. That's sort of part of the compromise as well. It's one of the things I like about the Xbox One X. It preloads things in the background. So if you're playing Vice City on that, it will preload the other islands, so you'll never have to go through a load screen. I think that's cool. So the final point of this week's podcast is it's kind of my personal opinion, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys think as well. So are games like Minecraft and OpenTCD and Undertale, Stardew Valley, games like that, are they now proving the point that the true art of video games is actually the user experience and not just the appearance of the game?
So like the way you interact with the character, the the interactions with the environment. Do you mean?
Yeah, so like Undertale is currently being lauded as one of the best narrative telling games of its generation, and perhaps of other generations as well. And it's pixel art. So in terms of graphic realism, there's next to none. But in terms of immersion and storytelling and the whole gameplay experience, it actually trumps a lot of other games that 4K graphics, or games like The Last of Us, for example, or Uncharted. People are saying Undertale actually does storytelling better than those types of games.
Oh yeah, that's the point. Like Nvidia, they've uh, they've introduced, like a graphics card that does RTX, shading and cells and all that.
Okay.
Um, but the library of games that can support RTX is like currently at what, maybe 5 or 6 at the moment.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of people comment whenever they make a post saying, "Oh, this can happen with RTX, blah blah," mocking it, saying like, "Oh, I look forward to playing like the only 2 3 games that can use it." You know, it's just it's there, but there's not a market for it yet.
I get what you're saying. That reminds me of when 4K was first a thing. There was a prominent celebrity who spent, I think it was like £50,000 on a 4K TV, even though there were no 4K channels, there were no DVDs or Blu-rays that could support 4K. There was nothing they could watch on that TV in 4K, but they bought it anyway.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, it's future-proofing, but perhaps excessive future-proofing.
Yeah, but it's kind of like having a really expensive watch now in today's day and age.
It's like a
Yeah.
very expensive statement. Like
Yeah.
there's there, at the time there wasn't really a need for it, but it's because you could get it and you can get it that they got it. It was like just say I've got this rather than
Yeah,
okay,
it's basically just like the flaunt.
yeah.
Like say, look how much this TV is worth, and it's in my living room.
Yeah. No, that's a very good way of putting it.
I was gonna say on your point, Mark, your original point that
Yeah.
I feel the way you play the game, not as in the style of how you play it, but in the physicality of how you play the game, definitely has an impact. So, the old Pokemon games, again, going back to that, when you had it on the Game Boy and you could fit that in your pocket, take it around with you, it felt like you had like a small world in your pocket. And now, like, you're playing it on the big screen and that it doesn't have that immersiveness to me.
Yeah. I tell you what I was thinking when I wrote this. So Anthem came out this year. To
Hmm.
Came out as more of a whimper than an explosion. Um, it's a very good game visually. It looks very nice, but I feel like the developers perhaps spent too long on that side of the game And there were lots of complications in the background. So the engine, for example, was not suited to the type of game, and that's not the developer's fault. So, do you think? I'm trying to think of a way to sort of dress this up. Games like Minecraft, for example, when Notch made Minecraft, he wasn't trying to make the best looking game. He wasn't trying to make the game that tells the best story. He just wanted to make a game that he wanted to play. And it's almost, very, very almost, the most successful video game of all time in terms of sales. Do you think like the simplicity of Minecraft is what makes it so popular?
Definitely, definitely. So I suppose it opens the age group that are likely to play it, so that demographic definitely is broader by having that art style. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a game that like all ages can get
yeah,
into, and it's
Yeah,
like
because
it's an easy learning curve. You're just embracing your creativity with it, you know.
Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's almost to say it's not really a game. It's more like um, what's the word for it?
like a
It's not.
tutorial or
It's a sandbox thing, but it's a canvas essentially.
yeah,
yeah,
It's like a
Yeah.
canvas,
that's
and
exactly
it's
the word I was
you can
thinking.
create anything on it.
Yeah, because to go back to the visual side of things, modders now have created shaders that make Minecraft look nicer. But again, I do feel like if Minecraft was a boring game to play in vanilla, then adding a shader pack to it wouldn't make it any less boring. So the fact that it's such a good game at its core component, and then people have gone and improved the art style of the game, you get the best of both worlds. I found out something about Minecraft the other day, which I thought was really cool. You know the soundtrack. There's different songs that play at different times. So you've got like the daytime music, and then when it starts to get to night, the music changes and becomes a bit more eerie.
Yeah,
There's a piece of music. I can't remember its actual name, but people call it the Adventurer's Song, and it's programmed into the game that music only starts playing the first time you travel more than 20 blocks away from your spawn. And
and never again.
no, it will continue playing, but like if you just stay in that area, you'll never hear that piece of music. But as soon as you step outside that boundary, it starts playing, and it's kind of like
so you
theme
unlock the
tune.
soundtrack.
Yeah, it's kind of like the phrase I saw was it's the theme tune to you exploring the game. So like it's you know like in Pokemon when you step outside Pallet Town for the first time and you get the is it Route One?
Oh yeah,
Um,
Route 101 or something or
yeah, and the music
Yeah,
starts playing for that particular route. It's kind
yeah.
of like that. So as soon as you step outside 20 blocks, that piece of music starts playing, and then as you continue to explore, it plays more and more and more.
Yeah, see, World of Warcraft do that, have that sort of similar premise as well. So you could go to a stronghold or a faction base, and they would have different music. Or you'd go down, you'd take a left, go down sort of a pathway, and you get to a certain point, and then the music will be different. It's like it would, but it wouldn't be a sudden sharp change. It would sort of fade out, then fade into the new environment you're in, and it then gives you each area a unique feel.
That's what I do like about Pokemon as well is the way that the music is designed to blend in to other tracks and depending on where you are on the map, you know straight away when you load a game up. So like if you haven't played the game for 6 months or whatever, and you might have forgotten where you were the last time you saved, as soon as you load the game up and the music starts playing, you just say, ah, I'm here. So I imagine World of Warcraft it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, yeah. So you just you're loading in the game, and you hear the soundtrack. You're like, oh yeah, I know why.
I feel like we need another music podcast because there's so many. Since we recorded the one a few weeks ago, there's so many more examples that I've thought of that I've tried to slip a couple into other podcasts, but I feel like it does need its own one still. So we might have to do that again.
yeah. But well, as we all know, there is no greater game music than that of Paper Mario.
I can
It's
either agree or disagree because I've never heard it.
then you're missing out, mate. You need to listen to a playlist of that.
Yeah, no, I'll
It's
have
so
to
on point.
because like the Undertale soundtrack, some of the pieces of music on that are superb. And again, Undertale. I mean, Undertale So many top 10 lists I see now, and Undertale is on there somewhere. And when I first saw it, I was very skeptical and thought, surely this game cannot be good at all these different things. But the more I learn about it, the more I realise that actually, yes, it does do that very well. Um,
It did so many things right though.
yeah, and Undertale was one guy, wasn't it?
Well, it was one guy like creating the code and stuff like that, and then he had someone help with the pixel art,
Yeah,
and I think that's about as much as it was.
that's incredible. Because again, AAA studios can't release a game as good as Undertale. It's amazing when you sort of put things into perspective like that. Another good game, actually. I've never mentioned this before on the podcast, but Banished. That's a really
Vanished.
Oh
yeah.
yes,
Have
I've
you heard
played
of it?
that. Yeah.
So you,
The only game Vanished I know of is like,
Banished with a B.
oh, Banished.
Yeah,
No, I've not heard of it.
It's like the civilization you look after and
yeah.
level up and sort of evolve, kind of.
It's a colony survival game.
Yeah.
So you're in this like god mode where it's a group of people that have been banished from another colony somewhere, and they have to set up on their own. Um, So you don't play as any of them, but you play as like this sort of top-down kind of view. So you build their houses, you build their communities, you set up trading, things like that. It's a very difficult game to get going because if you mess up anywhere, everyone dies.
Yep.
It's kind of one of the reasons I stopped playing it. But that was created by one guy as well. And it's from the get-go it was a very nice looking game, so it's incredibly impressive when you find out it's one guy who made it. But yeah, if anyone out there doesn't know about Banished, I do strongly recommend you check it out. It is a very fun game to play once you get past the first winter. Alright, we'll start wrapping up then. So a big thank you to my guests, to Kurt, to Alex, and to Dylan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks very much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and also check out the other XVI podcasts in the playlist in the description down below. If you haven't already subscribed and you like what you see, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and also click the bell notification so that you get notified as soon as a new video goes live. And yeah, thanks once again for watching, and until next time, take care.